additions to that and the variations in every.
These are, you've described that some of the plates are repeated, and the others change their position through chance operations. And the colors all change.
Also with chance operations.
With chance operations. Es sind immer Blätter, die also in 2 Exemplaren nur gedruckt werden. Einmal bleibt die gesamte Serie zusammen und ein zweites Blatt wird dann auch einzeln sozusagen verkaufbar sein.
One thing which is not controlled by chance, but chance is subjected to it, is that the horizontal line which crosses, you see, is always below the circle. It's never above the circle, nor does it intersect the circle. It's always below.
That's the decision.
That was a decision on my part. Where it is of course a chance determined. But it's often very low, and then in a sense it intersects the circle. It's here. But the reason I permitted that is that I'm thinking of the circle as a sun or a moon. And the line is the horizon. So that it's never above, but it can be, as in this one, the sun is setting.
Yeah, on the horizon.
Yes.
You're not interested in seeing the sun above the horizon as a good topic.
Below.
Below. Below, yeah.
The size of the circle changes. The size of the circle changes.
Yeah.
Here it's small.
And
That's great, right in the corner.
yeah,
It's very great.
and there's a big one on the horizon.
Right.
And of course the form of the yard, that's always different because it fell down.
The strings, you mean?
Yeah, the string?
There are plates with the fallen strings engraved on them, so that they take a different position. But I didn't drop the strings
For everyone.
especially for each one. I needed to find in this edition. I needed to find a way to make a large number of different etchings easily and quickly, because the time that I work at the Crown Point Press is I've always limited it to 2 weeks.
It's like studio working.
Yes.
Right, studio.
So that when I'm not there,
They have to do
they just do what they can without me. But in this case, we were able to make all of these in a period of 2 weeks. And the principle came, I think, from having a body of static images, and then a body of changing images. And we were able to accomplish all this work quickly.
But this is for the first time that you have something like an image with like horizon and sun or moon. There was, in the other it was just abstract forms by chance on the surface.
Well, they weren't necessarily abstract in the drawings of Dereaux. They were representational.
There were representations?
The drawings of Dereaux, yes.
Uh-huh. But you don't use them as representational signs to understand some content.
No, but they are.
Mm-hmm.
They suggest, and they're still here. this is the drawing of Thoreau. And this, and this, and this. Actually, they remain static.
In every frame.
Not all of them. Or do they?
They do.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yes, they're part of the static.
Yeah. They disappear only because of the color, changing the color.
The straight lines are mobile. And this is mobile. And this long rectangle is mobile. And the strings. And the rest is static.
Yeah.
The reason I call it Dereaux is because it strikes me as looking like the theater. And the horizontal line, instead of suggesting nature, as it did in my mind, suggests the stage. And the movement of these different images suggests the dance with which I'm so closely associated. So I thought of it as Dereaux, Thoreau, you see, Dereaux.
But you will not use it, or is it the plan to use it somewhere?
I have made it, and so that's my use for it. Whether a theater would use it is another question. I wouldn't refuse its use, nor would I suggest its use. But it exists. It's very much like the work of Buckminster Fuller. He refuses to act politically in the world, even though he has ideas about how to improve the world. He says, my work exists and people can use it if they have the wit to do it, but I won't push it on them. I won't impose it on them.
Und vielleicht zu den letzten, das sind 4. Herr Schöning hat fotografiert unten den Herstellungsprozess. Sie haben also dann die Fotos direkt von der Herstellung. Es ist auch nach dem I-Ging-Prinzip ausgewürfelt, die Position auf der Platte, die einzelnen Steine sind nummeriert und dann immer, wo der einzelne Stein liegen muss, wird er umrahmt und so entsteht praktisch das Feld, wird gefüllt mit den Steinen. Es geht weiter, you said that there will be another one, something like a summarize or some...
No, it carries it further. I was asked by a French editor who lives in Marseille, and Monsieur Dimanche is his name. And he makes a series of books. There will be 15 books. And they're called Ryoanji, which is the name of the garden in Japan, in Kyoto, that has sand and 15 stones in it. 15 stones in 3 groups. And he asked me to make a cover for a book of my writing, which they are publishing in the series. So it occurred to me the paper that he has is about this size. Not exactly, but about that size. And but for his cover, I took the exact size. And I looked around the house for 15 stones. And I simply drew around the stones at points determined by the I Ching, the Chinese book. And I sent the result, which pleased me, to him, and it pleased him. And that had 15 drawings. Then when I went to the Crown Point Press, I took the stones with me. And I began by drawing around the stones as I had done for the drawing, but on copper and in dry point. I drew again 15 times, and when we printed the result, it was absurd. That it was absolutely uninteresting to look at. And I don't know why. It's one of the mysteries. I worked for a week trying to find a way to print it that would give it a quality of not being absurd, of being interesting. But it never became interesting. Then it occurred to me to have recourse to multiplicity. And so I multiplied 15 by 15, which makes 225. And I drew around each one of the 15. I drew around each one of the 15 stones 15 times, making these dry points which you see. And when we printed them, they were immediately interesting. The first one. At least I think so. And many people have told me that they find it interesting. We say when we like a work of art, we say it's beautiful. But what we mean is that it's interesting. Because the word beauty has no meaning other than that we approve of it. And the only reason we approve of it is because it keeps our attention. Don't you think?
Mm-hmm. That means there could be less interesting work as the first one, and you can make a decision to make it interesting, more interesting.
I don't know how I would do that, but I know that the first things I did with the 15 stones were not interesting, and these are. At least they interest me. Mm-hmm. The reason they interest me is that I could look at them for a long, long time, and I would never know the end of it. Every time I look at one of those prints, I see something that I hadn't noticed before. This was also the case for me with the work of Mark Tobey, which I love very much, and I knew him. So that these in a sense, are my response to the work of Mark Tobey. In another sense, all of my work is a response to Mark Tobey. Perhaps not these, though slightly, but certainly the ones beyond, the white ones. They're white because of the white writings of Mark Tobey. I think he would have liked it. Because he would have seen his work in them, you know. Don't you think?
Yeah. But of course, he would make aesthetic decisions, and you...
He also would not make aesthetic decisions.
Really?
Yes, I'll tell you a story. I tell it in that composition in retrospect, which is published by WDR. Have you seen that?
We have it here in the
well, I tell the story in that text. When he taught painting, he would make a still life where we have the empty space here, and he would seat the students around, and he would ask them to look at this still life until they had it firmly in their minds. Then he had the wall covered with paper, and he would give them charcoal, and he required them to go to the wall and touch it with the nose and with the toes, and then draw what they remembered. Never leaving the wall with either the nose or the toes.
And both hands.
And just one hand drawing, and the people sliding up and down the wall. They were unable to draw what they had seen. So that a disconnection was made between the mind and the hand because of the physical position of the artist. One way or another, if we are interested in non-intention, one way or another we have to make a break between the mind and the hand. And this is what I've been doing in my etchings through the use of chance operations. And never do I do anything that is part of gesture, over which I would have a control. I have used the drawings of Dereaux simply because I didn't make them. And because I love them. The straight lines I can use because everyone has a rule there. The dropped strings I can use because of Marcel Duchamp. The circles I can use because of then here I can use rocks, which more or less opens the world.
It's the same operation like Marcel did to separate.
I can use it without involving my intentions. And what I've wanted to do in all of this work is to free my work from my intentions. It's a very amusing experiment, or you could say amusing investigation, to find out what happens when you separate intention from your activity. And when you do it as consistently and conscientiously as I think I have, and over such a long period of time. I've now used chance operations in all of my work thoroughly for 34 years.
34 years, that means it started somewhere? With what was the first?
The music of changes.
Oh, in the music?
Music of changes.
And in the visual work, it started with the graphics?
With anything I did in the graphics, I used chance operations, all of them.
Yeah. When did you start with the visual work?
The first works were done in collaboration with Calvin Assumption at the University of Illinois. And they were in response to the death of Marcel Duchamp. And many artists were asked to do something in memoriam of Marcel Duchamp. And I was with Jasper Johns when he received the same invitation I received to do something for, I forget what magazine it was, Art News or something. And he said, I don't want to say anything about myself. So I used, for what I did, not wanting to say anything about myself as the title of my work. And it's a quotation from Jasper Johns. Or rather, it's a statement about his feelings. And what I did in that case was to subject the dictionary to chance operations. And I made a series of 8 plexigrams and 2 lithographs, which are derived from the dictionary. And I found out later that Marcel had said at one point that it amused him very much to see signs where the weather had taken away some of the letters, because he said it was easy to figure out what the word had been originally, and he enjoyed doing that. And that's what those plexigrams and lithographs are words that are falling to pieces. And the reason that I had them fall to pieces through chance operations was because Marcel had died. So I wanted the words to die too. That was the first one. And it was initiated by the request from the magazine, and then it was continued in the form of plexigrams and lithographs through the request of an art collector in Cincinnati, whose name is Alice Weston. And she gave all the money to produce the edition. And then the edition was taken over by the Carl Solway Gallery. Then in the Carl Solway Gallery, there was Marguerite Roeder, who is here in Cologne now. And she had worked first in his gallery and then I think in another gallery. At any rate, she was part of the art world in New York. And she was in touch with Catherine Brown of the Crown Point Press in Oakland. And through Marguerite, Catherine Brown invited me to go to California to make etchings. And I accepted immediately, partly because I didn't know how to make them. And I saw that if I did it, I would have a new experience in my life. Years before, I had been invited by a very lovely and dear friend in India, Gira Sarabhai. I had been invited to take a walk in the Himalayas. Had I taken the walk, it would have been not on foot, but on elephant. And there would have been many servants, and we would have walked on elephants for several weeks in the Himalayas. It would have been an unforgettable experience. And I said I was busy, that I couldn't do it, And later when I was free, Gira Sarabhai was busy. So it's something that never took place. So this time, when I was invited to make etchings, remembering my failure to walk in the Himalayas, I accepted without hesitation. You all understand English? Or I should say that you all understand American. The first, in this book here,
Das sind also die Radierungen, leider sehr teuer. Wir müssen das für 60 Mark verkaufen, für was wir es auch einkaufen. Das nur nebenbei.
It gives the story of all of these different things. And the first one that I did there is described last in this catalog, and it's this 7-day diary.
No, we showed them last time in '78.
Which is called Not Knowing. That means not knowing how to make etchings.
Mm-hmm.
And I did in another way than Toby the same thing by closing my eyes and not looking at the copper when I drew on it. And I knew how many strokes I was to make through chance operations. And with what tools. but I didn't know where. And I had people standing around me because the plates were very small. So I had them standing around me so that they would say, now you can do it, because I was holding my hand to the position where it was over the plate. Then the next one was the drawings, the 17 drawings of Dereaux. And each one of those has different colors. But the position of the drawings remains the same. But the colors change. The next one, I approached the problem of change of position. And the images were straight lines, circles, and drawings of Dereaux. And it's called signals. And there were 35 different ones, and the images fell in different places. The way they fall in different places is that I make a grid of 64 by 64. Then I have the plate that is to be positioned at a particular point. Then with a protractor of 360 degrees, I turn the plate to the degree given by the chance operations. Sometimes it falls off. The result was that two of the etchings called signals have no images on them. And they, however, there is in visual art, as in music, there is no such thing as nothing to see. There is always something on the plate, even if you don't put anything on it.
Like the photograph of Mother. Like the photograph which
Yes.
Mother.
And so the empty ones have something on them. And when they are inked, we see what there is to see, which is the imperfections in the plate.
And even that, every print is different. Even every print from an empty plate is different
I think
from
so,
the
yeah.
other.
Yeah. However, with the signals, we made only one impression of each image. Also here, there was only one image of each change of color. Then came this series called Changes and Disappearances, which took, I think, 3 years, 79, 80, 81, 82, took 4 years to complete, because some of these are so complex that, it took, like 3 or 4 days to print. One of these has, between 200 and 300 colors on it. All the colors have blue in them, but all the other colors enter into combination with the blue. Here we made 2 prints of each image. And the one set of the prints has been distributed to collectors. The other set has been kept, and hopefully it will be acquired by some museum.
Like this one too. You made 2.
Yes. So far that hasn't happened. There have been shows in several museums, and there are several museums that want to have them. But the price for the purchase of them hasn't come forward. The same is true of these. A series exists which could be held all together. In this series, which you have over there, the 6 white ones, it begins with the full space, And then with each successive print, down to the 35th, we come to the golden section, and the top becomes empty. This is an image, the image of activity at the bottom and inactivity at the top is familiar from the work of Mark Tobey. And the whiteness and that was, as I said earlier, a response to his work. Working on this series of prints, I had an idea which I later developed in the field of music, but in a curiously different way. In the case of these prints, if a template, if one of the shapes which I was using, through chance operations, intersected the top, it was to be cut by chance operations. And so the number 1 plate here has large shapes, whereas the number 35 has all very small ones because they've all been cut. A family of templates, which was originally 66, became several hundred. Let's see. I think it says here. Well, when we had finished 27 of them, and that was when this was printed, there were 267 plates, whereas originally there were 66, so that they became more and more cut up. Well, I decided to make a piece for orchestra in which I would use these same templates to find the tones for an orchestra. And I realized almost immediately that if the templates went off the top, it would only affect the piccolo. So that where in visual work, this dimension is, so to say, important. In music, it's not that dimension, but this dimension is important. So that space is, space is like Barney Newman made it, vertically. Whereas music is in time, horizontally. It's very amusing. So that when a template fell off to the left, it brought about a change in the rhythm. I was able to interpret that as a change in the rhythm, so that the points where it fell off became tones that were on the strong beat. And if it fell off in this direction, they were on the weak beat. And I made a piece called 30 Pieces for 5 orchestras. Otherwise, following exactly the principles of this, which were to take the sheet, the space of the plate, and then to drop a string in memory of Marcel again. And then to bisect the copper further by straight lines through chance operations until I had a reservoir of 66 plates. So, in the case of the music, I took a piece of paper which was to be the size of the music of the orchestra. And I dropped a string on it and made straight lines bisecting it until I had over 64 templates. And then I found the pitches on the paper, which had been designed so that any point on it was a sound. And so I made a piece of music in a way analogous to the way I made the etchings.
What pieces?
30 pieces for 5 orchestras. It was done for Metz. Then the next one I did was this one, Dereaux. And then this year in January I made these and 35 monoprints and called HV, and also one photo etching. Now, where I live in New York is in what used to be an old department store of Altman's in the 19th century and the early 20th century. And across the street was Siegel Clark. At that time, in the 1890s, a very important department store. And it's a rather magnificent building with all sorts of like gargoyles and decorations on the building, balconies. The Pope could have lived there. He could have given a speech, And on the building, and no one has explained it to me why it happens, on the building there are, on 6th Avenue, 8 framed, beautiful, weathered images. Beautiful because they interest me. And they're beautiful in the sense of Chinese landscape. Or they're beautiful in the sense of extreme variation, of intensity, color. Some of them seem to be divided in 4, like the divisions of Ad Reinhardt. One of them is divided in 2 and suggests Mark Roscoe, besides suggesting Oriental landscape. Some of them don't seem to be divided at all. Whether they're metal or some other material, I don't know. On the floor below me, I live on the 5th floor. On the 4th floor, there are nothing but photographers. One of them very famous, Anna Leibovitz. Anyway, the one who was directly beneath me and who was therefore on a level to photograph these images straight, I employed to photograph them for me. And one of these photographs became an etching. And all 12, because there are 8 on 6th Avenue and 2 on 18th Street and 2 on 19th Street, all 12 will be the illustrations of my next book, which is called X.
What was the name?
Pardon?
It was late.
Wesley.
When it's going to
September.
September.
When I get back from this trip, I will read proof.
Uh-huh.
John, we put in the catalog, because Ryan had collected all the dates, a chronology,
Not
what
all.
you have done of the pieces which were played here by you in Cologne, and it's more than 3 pages.
Isn't
I
that
couldn't
amazing?
believe that. Yeah, is that a special relationship, maybe beside the WDR? Is that the beginning?
The beginning was with Dereaux.
Mm-hmm.
But the very moment that I went to Dereaux, I was invited to come after that to Cologne.
Mm-hmm.
Who was it then? Do you know? Was it
No,
Dr.
we have
Becker?
Dr. Becker?
No,
No, not
Tomek
yet.
or Eimert. Tomek or Eimert?
Must be Eimert.
Otto Tomek?
One of those.
Oh, yeah.
No, it must be Iman.
In other words, in Cologne there has always been a live interest in modern music. And not of just one kind, but of many kinds. For instance, there's a great difference between Heinrich and Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. And at the time, besides Stockhausen, there was
Helms was here.
König
König and Helms were
and
Not on the
Helms.
radio. Not as a reductor, on the
here.
radio.
No, Helms had
No,
been
but
here.
they were
Helms made the
they were in the society. They were
Yeah.
in the society. But they mostly have left. Karl-Heinz remains alone, doesn't he? Except for Kago. Kago has been able to share Cologne. Stockholm with Stockhausen.
So far there's a great lack in the state series between 63 and 72. Only 67 there's this Atlas Eclipticalis performance. But without you.
But then it is growing again. Every year. It comes that.
That's a taboo soon. Down here. In West Germany, quite.
Zur Ausstellung vielleicht jetzt nur noch das Stück von dem Robert Mayhew. Das ist also auch nach einem wahnsinnig komplizierten System bis hin in die fotografische Technik nach diesen Chance Operations gemacht. Das ist vorne erklärt im Text, hier im Katalog ist die deutsche Übersetzung auch mit drin. 216 Fotos. Und während der Ausstellung werden die Kassetten laufen der beiden Lesungen, sodass also derjenige, der kommt, sich das auch hier anhören kann, was er gestern Abend entweder verpasst hat oder sich nochmal auf nachbereiten kann. Das wird dann auf dem Kassettenrekorder hier sein.
I think it's interesting to say that one of the things that is characteristic of most photographers, I would say of almost all photographers except Robert Mayhew, is that they take lots and lots of pictures, and then they choose which pictures they like among the ones that they've taken. You never do it. You take them all.
Take them all.
Also Mayhem takes all of them. Klaus is an exception.
He needs a circus principle.
Yeah, yes.
I think it's also really interesting, beautiful work.
Yes.
But it's
Really
not,
beautiful.
but it's not complicated. But it's not complicated. You said complicated. It's very clear and
Yeah,
simple.
the system is clear, but I mean it's a complicated process to do it, to realize it, to focus.
What's marvelous is that the different photographs have different feelings.
Yeah.
They don't look like the same photographer.
And the black is always different. It's not black. It's different shapes of black, different. The contour is different. It's
Yeah.
always a different photograph.
He's now continuing the work with chance operations and finding the subject, for instance, through chance operations, subjecting a city to the map of the city so that he knows where to go to take a picture and which direction to point the camera and so on.
Ja, vielleicht sollten wir sagen, dass wir also nicht nur die beiden Lesungen vorführen während der Ausstellung,
Ach
ab
so.
morgen früh,
Ja.
sondern auch die Texte, die Vitrinen vielleicht,
Ja.
auslegen. We make a copy of your text from yours and we have to themes and variations text
It's already
in your
there.
printing edition. And so kann jeder sozusagen den Bezug zwischen Hören und Lesen.
Can you hear it with the headphones?
We sound in the room.
But then it'll be very disturbing to see.
Yeah, but it will not be so many people. Pessimistisch. And we know the people, there was an exhibition opened yesterday.
Don't play it all the time.
No.
Why
He will be.
Why could it be disturbing? I don't understand.
We used to have...
If I hear aria and if I hear piano concert together, it's not disturbing for me.
No, but if I used to go to the Guggenheim Museum in New York, and they always thought that there was a close relation between music and art. And so they had music being played while you would look at the Kandinsky's collection.
Yeah.
I found it absolutely impossible.
What kind of music they play?
They played the music that Kandinsky liked, whatever it was.
The Hauptmann.
But you always say you must do 1, 2, 3 things at one time.
I know.
Noch die wichtigste Information zum Schluss machen wir noch die
But your
beiden
music
Hörspiele, die
is
Herr
way
Schöning
from life.
vorstellt. Wenn Sie
It's
das
life.
vielleicht mit erwähnen können, die beiden Daten. Nicht, das ist falsch. 7. Juni und 12. Juni, Sie haben das auf der Einladung. Tschüss.
You would think that your lectures today are not so good to be superposed as your works before.
You mean to have 2 lectures at once?
No, or looking at the drawings and hearing. It's a kind of superposition, I think. You wouldn't agree with your recent works.
I was just telling Giselle that I prefer the superimposition of something non-intentional, like the sound of the traffic and the church bells. That I can deal with. But when you play something which is from me, because you're looking at something from me, then you begin to make an intention.
But if you,
Or you think you're having something.
I don't see that.
but if there are some musicians and they play 2 or 3 pieces, 2 or 3 compositions of you, it's also an intention to play the 3 pieces together.
Oh yeah.
But then he is doing the intention. It's different with the piece with the 30 record players, and by chance you have 50 different plates. That is one piece. We could install that here, but we said no to have it really as an exhibition. But then you have the intention that the Beatles coming together with Beethoven.
So,
And this is different. I can understand.
so it would be possible if the concepts are opened for this kind of operation, for superposition.
Sie können sich frei machen von dieser Absicht.
Yeah.
I think I must be... someone pointed this out to me, that I have a different attitude toward writing than I have toward music, than I have toward painting. In other words, that I'm inconsistent about it. The person who pointed this out to me, his name is Stephen Addis, and he was in the class that I gave at the new school that included Alan Capra and George Brecht and Dick Higgins, Allison was there. So he became not a musician but a curator of Oriental art in a museum attached to a university in Kansas. And he does his work very well. And he became interested in my etchings because of a connection that he saw between them and Oriental ways of dealing with graphic art. Then he wrote me a letter in which he said I was more careless about music than I was about the other arts. In other words, I'm willing to listen to a wider variety of sounds than I am to look. I should get his letter out and reread it because it was an interesting. It's an interesting point. I am primarily sensitive to sound, and my fullest energy has gone into changing my mind with regard to sound. I've spent my life doing that. I haven't had enough time to do that in visual arts as completely as I have in music. On the other hand, I don't know whether I've been completely successful even in music. Because now that you bring up this question of the superimposition of things and of my willingness to have them superimposed, it was precisely because of my unwillingness to accept the superimposition of the various sounds that were put in the Stolberg over my three dances, which was presented in the form of a recording, which I also don't like. That I decided to leave the concert, to leave the hall. I didn't want to hear it. And yet my whole life has been devoted to freeing myself in the field of sound from my likes and dislikes. And yet, Saturday evening, I found myself in a situation which I heartily disliked. And so I got up and left. Remember, not at all sure whether I was doing the right thing, but following the general outlines of the Oriental life. There's a lovely saying, I don't know whether it comes originally from China or from Japan, but it says, when you're in a bad situation, the best thing to do is to go away.
Okay.
If you're losing a war, you should retreat.
Thank you. I think it was a very interesting, informative, a beautiful morning.
Yeah.
To give me a short interview.
Yes.
Yes, we do? Okay. Can we do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Gehen wir ruhig, damit es nicht so drauf kommt.
Ja. So.
Ja, oder macht das doch mal ein Zimmer oder so.
Nö, wir können das hier machen.
Geht das so? Ja.
We can do it here, yeah?
Und Sie können das machen?
Yes. First, I want to know what you're doing now. Which work, kind of work.
Schön.
Ja.
Are you at? You said writing through the Bible or something like that?
So far through the Bible itself.
Uh-huh. And how do you write through that?
I use the word Jehovah, which is one of the names of God. And he's the most important character in the Old Testament.
And you go by his words?
I find the first J,
Yeah.
and then the next that doesn't have an E,
Yeah, I know.
an E that doesn't have an H.
And you take always his name. But I remember some years ago you said, I'll do this 5 writings through Finnegan's Wake, and then it's enough with this sort of writing through. I wouldn't do that anymore, you said.
I did.
Yeah.
Then I changed my mind.
So, when you always take these texts, you kind of destroy them. Why do you destroy them if you like them?
I don't destroy them because they continue. What I do is to make something else using them. But they remain. It would be impossible to destroy the Bible.
Oh, it would. I think it would be.
You simply arrive at something else which is produced by the Bible itself.
You continue the spirit of the Bible.
Certainly. Or the Bible continues its own spirit. It's not able to be anything other than what it is. I mean to say that what it produces is life.
Yeah. It becomes the sense of the Bible.
If you look at my writings through Finnegan's Way, and then look at my empty words, you can see that the empty words doesn't come from Finnegan's Way.
Yeah.
It comes from
Thoreau.
Thoreau.
Yeah.
So you'll see that the work from the Bible comes from the Bible and doesn't come from Thoreau or
Yeah.
from Jones.
Of course. You say always you should speak without syntax and language without syntax, but you yourself are speaking normal syntax, syntactical sentences, and you do it only in art. So the language without syntax is only an art form for you. Is that right? You don't do it in your daily life.
Well, we do it when our daily life has no intentions.
Then we do it.
Sometimes we do.
You do.
I might.
I can't believe that you're bluffing.
No, I might. For instance, if you weren't interviewing me now,
Yeah.
we might sit here and we might enjoy ourselves by making
Noises.
noises.
Do you really wrote that words are you useless? For example, if you want to do something against the actions of the government, you said the words are useless. Don't you think that's a very pessimistic view?
Yes.
And you really believe it? That
As the government continues, I find almost anything believable about it. Did you hear that who may run against Ronald Reagan?
no.
Paul Newman.
Then is it really a serious thought by you that we need a society in which communication is not practiced? You said we need it in your society.
When you're with someone you love,
Yeah.
don't you notice that the conversation decreases?
Yes.
You don't talk very much to people you love.
Yeah, but you don't love everybody.
Hmm?
You don't love everybody.
No, but that's what we need. We need a society in which people have more confidence in one another. And at present, we have a society in which people are afraid of one another. The proportions.
So you have 17 sections in yours.
Yes, and there are 8. They go 8, 4, 4, 1. And so I made a long space between the 8 and the 4, between the 4 and the 4 and the 4 and the 1. That was when I had a chance to drink some wine.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
It sounded, yesterday the voice sounded a little like